Well guys, it is finally upon us, the fourth and final chapter of Kubo's limited run series Burn the Witch. Except, guess what, it's not the final chapter after all. It has been confirmed that there's going to be a season 2 for Burn the Witch, which I'm really excited about. As I've been saying, I've been advocating for a continuation of this series for at least the last 3 weeks now. And so has basically everybody else. I think we all agree that this new world that Kubo has created deserves to be allowed to breathe, to be expanded upon, and just be continued, because he's introduced so many interesting new concepts and characters that I really want to see more of. I can't wait to see more from people like the Top of Horns who haven't done anything yet, and just to see where Kubo takes the story in this new universe. And I think this final chapter of at least this small, seemingly self-contained story does a really good job of summing up everything that we've seen so far, dropping some really exciting new teases, but perhaps most importantly, creating some tantalising new threads for where the story could go in the future. So without further ado, let's get into the review. But if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, guys, make sure to hit that button before you do anything else. You are in the perfect place for Bleach content. We're really close to 25,000 subs, which is pretty crazy stuff. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. It really helps with the exposure on these videos. And also, don't forget to hit the notification bell on my channel as well. Become a part of the wider community by following me on Twitter. And don't forget to join the Discord, the link to which is in the description of the video. Burn the Witch Chapter 4 then, and as I said already, this chapter has the unenviable task of being an exciting conclusion to this small story so far, while also setting up future events in the series. This chapter is called If a Lion Could Speak, We Couldn't Understand, and as with the last 3 chapters, it starts with a colour page, except this time it is exactly what I have been asking for. This colour page features the Top of Horns in almost their entirety. There is no Saka Rin on here still, but these guys look phenomenal, and it's just so good to get another group colour page picture from Kubo, the likes of which we obviously used to get in Bleach. It's just really exciting, and it feels so Bleach-like to get a picture like this once again. All of these guys look pretty amazing. I'm not too big on the designs of both Trombone Takinen and Count Naya Milive. Neither of them are really doing it for me. However, on the flip side, Sullivan Squire and Harry Shake are some of the coolest looking characters I have seen in this franchise so far. Bruno Bang Knife obviously also looks pretty badass, and I really do like the designs for Roy B. Dipper and Wolfgang Slashhout as well, but Harry and Sullivan are my 2 standout favourites so far. Let me know in the comments below, by the way, after having a look at this colour page, which of these designs is your favourite, and which member of the Top of Horns are you most excited to see do something in the franchise. I have to say, it kind of throws me off a bit that both Bruno and Roy basically wear the exact same shade of blue, and they've got a lot of it on as well. I feel like Kubo could have changed up a bit, but it's really a minor complaint for what is a really cool looking cast of characters. One thing I will say quickly is that I love that both Roy and Wolfgang are wearing suits. Kubo can draw a suit that looks really badass, and these characters look really cool. I know we've mentioned it before as well, but Sullivan Squire really does look like she's a member of the Vandenreich or something, but just wearing black instead of white. That's really intriguing, and you know, the rest of them, they do look pretty good. I like I said, I love Harry. He looks like a bit like Urahara, but kind of even more laid back, if that's possible. And while I'm not a huge fan of Trombone and Count Naya, they kind of look like they've fallen off the Fairytale cart to me. Trombone, at the very least, does kind of look like nothing we've ever seen before in the series. Now, one thing I really like about this chapter is, despite its length being basically the longest chapter we've had so far, it really gets to the meat of the action and of the story really very quickly. You have Bruno Bang Knife continuing to be the best Basby impersonator on the planet, trying to intimidate Balgo, basically saying that everyone in Reverse London has a bounty for this guy and that everybody is going to be looking for him. Just before any fighting can break out, however, Macy's dragon Ellie arrives. Now, I did predict this last week. I said the way the chapter left off with Ellie really said to me that she was going to show up in some kind of dramatic fashion this week, but I didn't really expect what was going to happen next. Bruno kind of turns around to her, very typical Bleach bad guy, and basically, you know, with his hand out, is like, I don't have time for you anymore, like he's going to wipe her out, but she disappears. And she's apparently using an ability called Stealth Scale, which is something that not every dragon can do, let's put it that way. Stealth scale seems to essentially allow a dragon to erase its own existence and then reappear somewhere else, almost out of out of thin air. And this is actually really cool because Ninny mentions that when she first saw Ellie last time, or 2 chapters ago in fact, Ellie was appearing out of nowhere. And actually, if you go and look back, yeah, she actually was. Kubo drew that in, which I really, really appreciate. But anyway, Ellie's claw comes out of the sky and tears into Bruno's dragon, Rickenbacker. And then we get to see Ellie in all its brand new glory. It's now we get some really important lore for what I believe to be the future of the series. So Ellie has molted in the moonlight apparently, which is a really cool concept in and of itself. And Bruno notes that Ellie must be one of the Marchans. Now we get this really cool image of Ellie in its brand new form. It looks very regal. It almost has like a crown on its head. I love the way it looks. It looks almost like a giant swan or something like that. A massive, massive bird. And it's like clinging almost to this European Gothic style clock tower. The artwork and the whole kind of theming in this chapter is really, really on point and exactly how I would love Kubo to use a London style setting. Now what's really cool about the Marchans is that these 7 dragons are all actually named after fairy tales, and I'll try and do my best to kind of gauge what fairy tale each of these are. Some of them are very, very obvious, some of them not so much, at least to me anyway, but if you do know what the fairy tale is, please let me know in the comments below. So the first dragon is called Snow White. That one is very self-explanatory. The next one is Red Dress, which I'm kind of assuming is Little Red Riding Hood. After that we have Golden Axe. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's the name of a retro video game. I don't know what the Golden Axe one is, so if you do know that, please let me know in the comments below. We also have Bubbles, which I'm assuming is probably going to be the Little Mermaid, Sugar House, which I'm guessing is Hansel and Gretel, and then the final one is Band of Animals. That is a weird name for a dragon. I don't know what that one is either. I'm not sure. So again, if you have an answer to those 2 that I was missing, please do let me know in the comments below. And then we find out that Ellie is actually short for Cinderella, hence the whole molting in the moonlight concept. Anyway, it turns out that Ellie has been taking lessons from Bambietta Bastabine because she has an ability called Star Ash. Basically, her massive wings, whenever they flutter, it sends a bunch of ash everywhere, which causes devastating explosions. Really, really nice artwork again in this chapter. There's a lot of big, fancy-looking double-page spreads, and the whole chapter, this is probably the best chapter so far, I would say. And the artwork is just completely on point. So good seeing Kubo being able to stretch his wings and just do something new while retaining that patented Bleach style that everyone loves so much. So now we get some really interesting stuff. Basically, Bruno decides to turn his attention away from killing Balgo to try and take on this massive Marchan dragon. And he says that the Marchans are the progenitors of the Dark Dragons. They are humanity's main enemy. And he unravels the bandage on his arm, which apparently is actually like a bandana with like a skull on it. It's super edgy looking and a bit cheesy, but I won't lie, it does make him look really cool. And he proceeds to begin trying to take this dragon on. Now, this chapter actually does wonders for Bruno, in my opinion, making him a more well-rounded character. He's not actually just a bad guy. He's not necessarily just your typical hot-headed kind of character. He really seems to care about Rickenbacker, and he says, you know, can you take it on with just 3 wings? Because Ellie did kind of wreck one of its wings originally. So he prepares to go and fight it. He is still doing this to gain recognition for himself. I find that kind of interesting because he is already the head of an entire faction in the Wingbind division, so I don't know really what more recognition he wants, but he wants to bring down the Marchan for himself. Anyway, Ninny obviously decides that she wants to help Bruno take down Cinderella, but Noel doesn't want to bring in any reinforcements for fear that they'll kill Balgo, but the Star Ash is still going everywhere, causing massive explosions, so they take Balgo and Macy and get away from the battlefield. Meanwhile, Bruno and Rickenbacker begin to fight Cinderella, and it's a really cool fight scene with some real creativity imbued in the way they fight. Basically, Bruno has a bunch of spray paint cans on his belt, and he sprays a summoning circle onto Rickenbacker's wing. Now, we know already that Bruno is the leader of the Magic Circles division, so clearly this is a magic circle. He is a summoner, and he summons like monsters out of these circles. It's really, really cool, and I'm assuming this is where the name Inks comes from. It's all to do with the spray paint, perhaps. I don't know entirely, but he basically uses the first one of these summoning seals to summon this crazy monster which then attacks Cinderella. So the first thing he summons is called Hunger Shadow, and it is literally like this black shadow mass, almost like this feral creature that comes out of the summoning circle and attacks Cinderella. One small detail I really like is that the design on Bruno's mask seems to change in real time with his own mouth. Like when he shouts at Hunger Shadow, the fangs on his mask actually open up. I like that sort of thing, that's really, really cool. Cinderella doesn't like that, however, and she destroys the Hunger Shadow without taking so much as a drop of blood's worth of damage. Ninny and Noel arrive again, having hidden Balgo and Macy somewhere safe, and Bruno tells them to cover him. And it's here that I really like this dynamic, because again, Bruno's not just a bad guy. He does still work for the same company that these guys do, and getting to see them actually work together is really cool. Bruno tells them if they destroy the central spire on Cinderella's crown, it should bring down the dragon, but Noel's not entirely sure if it's just a legend or not. Bruno tries to sweeten the deal with them by saying that if they help him take down the dragon, he'll accept their transfer to the Inks division. Now, considering neither of them actually seem to want this, it makes me wonder if maybe Bruno just wants them as part of his group because he knows how talented these two witches actually are. Regardless, we get to see some really cool magic now. Ninny and Noel basically work together in tandem to use this ability called Supernal Jail. It kind of reminds me a bit of Rikujo Koro, but it basically just seals the dragon in this, like, almost, cage of light, essentially. And it's now that Bruno tries to summon something else, and this one is really weird, and I'm not entirely sure I've quite worked out what he's actually doing here, but he uses an ability called Greedy Curtain, and basically a portal or a void opens up above Ellie, and some kind of ooze comes out and envelops the dragon. The ooze itself seems to be made of words. I can't tell if that's just done for like artistic effect, but it definitely seems to be saying something. If you look closely at the ooze coming out of the curtain, I'm sure it reads "just choke," which is, again, I don't really know what that's all about. It seems pretty weird to me, but Bruno says that he doesn't think it will kill the dragon, but as he says that, a massive explosion goes off, and Ellie once again seems to break free of his attack, much to his shock. Rickenbacker seems to be down for the count, and Noel and Ninny don't really know what to do in this situation, but Balgo and Macy reappear by their sides, and this seems to get Cinderella's attention, and it goes soaring over to them at an alarming speed. One thing I do like is that because this is set in London, Bruno has to say bloody hell all the time, apparently, which I think is quite funny. Really reminds me of like early Harry Potter films. I love that that's like his curse of choice in this series. While Noel and Ninny prepare to face off against Cinderella, Macy steps in and basically says, look, Cinderella might be coming because I'm here. It might be able to be swayed and it might actually be our friend. However, as Cinderella arrives, it basically just tries to attack them straight away, causing Noel and Ninny to have to put up a defensive barrier. It's here that Ninny tries to get through to Macy by using the same monologue that she does at the start of the very first chapter here, basically talking about how fairy tales are full of it, saying that what good is magic if it just fades away? It doesn't mean anything. You need to stop insisting that it's the dragon that makes you special when we are the ones that cast the magic. And it's basically just trying to say to Macy that the dragon doesn't make you special. You do that yourself, regardless of the dragon. You can't get through to someone who won't listen to you. Trying to get Macy out of this idea that she needs Ellie to be something of importance, essentially. I do love the way it circles back round to Ninny's whole fairy tales are full of it monologue. I never expected that to really be anything, but it's really, really nice. And it's nice to see Ninny get a moment of maturity here as well, actually not shouting and jumping around for once, but she's actually being quite serious and giving some pretty sage advice. And I really like this moment for the character. Regardless of Ninny's speech, Cinderella is moving in for the kill. And basically Balgo says, is there anything I can do? Is there anything I can do? And Noel says, no, you need to get out of here, just take your pipe that we gave you and run. But the moment Balgo grabs the pipe, a sword comes out of the end of it. It's very Harry Potter-esque, reminding me of the Sword of Gryffindor, but basically like this almost like blade of light comes out of the end of the pipe. No one has any idea why. Whether Balgo is like some chosen one or something like that. And I really thought he was actually going to kill Cinderella here, because I kind of figured that was how he was going to get out of his bounty. I thought that by taking down Cinderella, Balgo would be absolved, essentially, and they would kind of let him go, in a sense. But that's not quite what happens. But Balgo gets the sword, and everyone's just like, what is going on? I do love how Osushi-chan is like casually like licking his neck, because obviously Osushi is just hanging out in his hood, which I love. But So yeah, everyone's kind of like, what is going on here? And Cinderella takes a brief moment to almost like stop and stare at this sword. As it stops for the briefest of moments, it is sniped through the head from miles and miles away. Someone has just popped this dragon straight in the forehead, blowing up the central bit of its crown and apparently killing it immediately. Now, I was reading this and I was like, what is going on here? Who is this going to be? And I turned the page and it is Banx Jr. proving what we've all been believing so far, that this guy is actually a super secret badass. I love the way this plays out because nobody knows who's done this move. Nobody knows who has sniped this dragon. But I love that Billy is just sat there, basically in the Wingbind offices, using his finger like a sniper rifle, but he's by a window, he's created a hole in the glass, and he's just like, whoa, did I do that? Obviously knowing he knows he's that powerful, I would assume it's not an act at this point, but we guessed from the start of last week's chapter that Billy was going to be involved somehow, going to save his subordinates' lives. And yeah, he's just popped this dragon from gotta be miles away. And I think that's really, really cool. Makes me even more excited for this character than I was already. He is that hidden badass guy, right? You know, he's like, oh, you know, did I manage to really do that? And you know something's going on there. Anyway, we then skip ahead a little bit. The dragon has been killed, and Ninny is raging that they don't get any compensation for the job. Billy basically says, you know, you do get compensation, but I'm pretty sure that Bruno Bangknife was the one who dealt the finishing blow. So, as I said, nobody actually knows who killed this thing. But I think some people have some suspicions towards the end of the chapter, and it makes me really intrigued for that part of the story. That subplot involving Billy Banx Jr., definitely one of my favourite things so far. Anyway, it turns out that Macy is actually going to be joining their little friendship group, which a couple of people did actually kind of predict last week. I honestly thought she could have died in this chapter, to be honest. I kind of thought that was going to happen, especially if Ellie was getting involved in the story. But Macy joining the team as well, because she's apparently slightly dragon-clad, is pretty cool. You know, it fleshes out the main team a bit more, and hopefully they'll have more to do in the coming seasons. Balgo clearly has an important role to play, being, I would assume, some kind of chosen one or something like that. You know, I don't want to use the Harry Potter example too much, but it does remind me an awful lot of that, being maybe some kind of Piper's legend or something like that. If Kubo is going down the route of fairy tales, of stories of legends, that sort of thing, I could definitely see Balgo being related to some kind of legendary hero. If we're doing like fairy tales, I just want to pluck this idea straight out of my head. Maybe it's to do with Arthur, King Arthur and the sword and the stone, that sort of thing. Balgo is the only one who's able to draw this sword. Maybe. I really don't know. I could definitely see something like that. This world seems very ready for something like Arthur and Merlin. I could absolutely see that being involved here somehow. So that's just my theory for now anyway. It's very early. We've barely seen anything about it, but it's very early talk so far. But I could maybe see something like a King Arthur reference going on with Balgo, perhaps. Speaking of Balgo, Noel basically asked Billy what's going to happen to him, because obviously he was scheduled for execution. However, we then get another very interesting part of this chapter. This chapter is honestly full of great moments, but it turns out that Bruno Bangknife has advocated for stopping the execution. He's gone to Wolfgang, who, as we know, is the kind of head of the Justice Department of Wingbind, and basically given him an application to release Balgo from this bounty. And Wolfgang kind of turns around and says, I'm kind of surprised this is coming from you, Bruno, of all people, but if Balgo was the trigger for Cinderella's arrival, then it's all the more reason to keep him alive. We then find out from Wolfgang that it appears the end game for Wingbind is to wipe out all of the Martians. Now, if you ask me, I'm interested to see where this is going. I don't know why, but when I read this, my immediate first thought was almost like a Shadow of the Colossus thing. Like, what if the Martians actually aren't evil, if they're not like necessarily dangerous, but they've been provoked or something like that, and Wingbind wants to take them out. I think I maybe don't trust Wingbind yet, considering how quickly they moved to take out Balgo. It makes them a little bit difficult to trust, especially when you consider characters like Wolfgang and Sullivan are very, very shady so far. I'm interested to see where that goes, but I do think the whole eliminating the Martians is going to be the main driving plot for basically the rest of the story. I think it's kind of fitting that there are basically as many members of Top of Horns as there are Martians. I think we'll probably get to see maybe not quite this formulaic, but one of the members of Top of Horns involved with perhaps each dragon. I could definitely see that in the future. So we knew from the beginning of last chapter that Sullivan was the one who spoke to Billy Banx Jr. Therefore, it makes sense that Sullivan would know that Billy was planning on making some kind of a move. We get another great moment where she alone moves up to the place that Billy sniped the dragon from, and she investigates the perfectly cut circle in the glass. So she knows that Billy basically popped the dragon from here. She says, Junior, you scoundrel, obviously referring to Billy, and kind of saying, yeah, I was right not to underestimate the son of a hero. This dialogue, again, is kind of what making me think about the whole King Arthur thing for Balgo. Perhaps he's the son of a hero as well. Billy Banx Sr., I'm wondering who that is. Maybe he was originally the leader of Sabres before Sullivan or something like that. He clearly has great fighting prowess, as Billy is obviously no slouch, taking out a Martian in a single hit from that far away. But yeah, I love this moment. I love that Sullivan is snooping around, doing a bit of investigation. You kind of got to wonder, like, who's on what side here. Billy, I'm assuming, is a good guy, no questions asked, because everything he does seems to be in service of protecting his subordinates. But Sullivan obviously knows Billy's history. Whether everyone else does or not, I don't know, but regardless, I'm really intrigued by this scene. I thought it was really interesting. The chapter ends kind of abruptly, to be honest, but also very sweetly. So we find out that Balgo has been let go and is seemingly returning to normal life. He wasn't allowed to keep the pipe or the mantle, but he and Osushi are back to normal, it seems, and he ends up finding Noel, or more accurately, Noel finds him, and she doesn't really say anything. She just hugs him, because obviously she thought he was going to die. She's not really one to show him any affection, because he's a bit annoying, always sort of clinging on to her whenever he can, but this is a pretty nice moment between these two characters, and it's moments like this that I hope will mature Balgo as a character moving forwards. She's obviously very happy that he's... I'm assuming that's what's going on here anyway. She's very happy that he's alive and is probably no longer scheduled for executions. I assume Billy told her that. And it's a nice, sweet way to end the story before we move on to, I assume, bigger things when the next season arrives. But that's the end of Burn the Witch Chapter 4 and the final Chapter 4 now for Kubo's new story, and I really, really liked it. This chapter is a 5 out of 5 for me. I think Kubo pulled out all the stops for this finale. I think the transformation for Ellie and the revelation that it was this Martian creature was really, really cool and really good for the lore and the story moving forwards. The fight scenes were fantastic. This was a brilliant chapter for Bruno Bangknife, really showing off what he can do, really showing off the creativity behind how these guys fight. If Bruno fights like that, I can't wait to see what the other characters do, and I think we could probably have some predictions already. Like, I'm assuming Roy, being the leader of Anthems, is basically going to be almost maybe singing some kind of magic like that, or he's just going to be very good at spells and chants. Either way, there's loads to go off here, which is why I'm so happy that the series is carrying on beyond this chapter. I can't wait to pick up the volume when hopefully it gets released in English. But yeah, I'm really, really excited. I loved this chapter. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this week's chapter of Burn the Witch. When do you think Season 2 is going to be released? And let me know what you think is going to happen with the story moving forwards. Alright guys, but until next time, I shall catch you later. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done already. But yeah, until then, I'll see you then. Goodbye.